What do you think if you do have to pay like a fine or a fee or whatever, what do you think the courts do with that money?
I think it depends, because I know that we have certain fines and fees in Seattle proper that actually go to very specific different funds. So I'm not entirely sure. I assume it gets put back to public goods sometimes, but maybe not all the time.
Some of them do go to the state, and some stay locally. Most of the fees don't stay locally. Infractions do, speeding tickets that are captured, or a parking ticket is a civil infraction, but that's a different bailiwick than the ones that attach to criminal charges.
Yeah, well, for instance, in a violent crime, I think it goes to a violent crime fund for other violent victims that are victims of violent crimes.
I think it's worth thinking about how do we approach fines and fees in the law generally, and it's worth knowing that in Washington that has evolved quite a bit over recent history. So the last 10 to 15 years, I think there have been significant changes in terms of how the courts view it, but also, perhaps more importantly, how the legislature has changed the laws associated with fines and fees.
There are very few mandatory fines required under statute. DUI comes with mandatory fines and fees. There are a series of percentages that go to brain trauma injuries and to, so sort of a victims fund, as one of the gentlemen was talking about. In the Superior Court, they definitely have a victim assessment fee that they impose, and it does indeed feed the statewide fund that goes to victims of violent crimes. But even with that, our Supreme Court has dictated to the judges that we have to take into account the person that's before us.
And so I think there was a sentiment not that long ago, somewhere 15 plus years ago, it was appropriate, again, we're talking about in criminal cases in particular, that people convicted of crimes would pay fines or fees, irregardless of their ability, their financial ability or indigency, to help pay a portion of the cost of the court system or the cost of administration of the courts.
Roughly 80% of the people that are coming into this municipal court qualify to have an assigned attorney, which means that they fall under the category of living at 125% below the federal poverty guidelines. Racking them up on a whole bunch of fines and fees is just going to go to collections and places them in a worse state than which is like another punishment on top of already the punishment that the mandatory minimums that may attach. So taking into account what they can pay is a requirement of us.
We as a community and society, and again, more specifically, the legislature has realized that is not necessarily appropriate, and that especially where folks can't afford to pay, they shouldn't necessarily be paying for those things. So a pretty dramatic shift in terms of how the law has looked at this over the last just 15 or so years.